There's a lot of things I really wish I knew way back when. What's going on? My name is Brian and welcome back to another episode of Paint Society. And it has been a struggle from the beginning when I first started to learn how to paint to this point now, with learning every single day. And today's video, I'm going to share with you some things I really wish I knew when I first entered the paint booth. And I'm going to be sharing with you today some of my own personal struggles when it comes to painting, and some of these struggles even made me want to quit. And well, quitting really was never an option, but it felt that way sometimes. You just wanted to walk out of the booth and maybe take on another career or just stick with what you really knew. And I really gave it a lot of time, and that's what I want you guys to learn from this video. We're going to talk about some of the most common mistakes, some things you should know before you go into the paint job. If you're a rookie painter, these tips and tricks and things that I've learned are really going to help you out. And some of these tips might seem minute and might not seem important, but they actually all are. And it starts really from the very beginning. A lot of you guys think that painting is just painting, and it's really not. It's a lot about the surface preparation. So starting from the very beginning, once the car has entered the booth, you want to make sure that everything is completely taped down. You want to make sure you check all of your tape. You make sure that everything is connected to some sort of the panel of the vehicle. That way you can get the cleanest possible paint job. Sometimes you really overlook areas, and we don't know until the very end in the final paint job, and those overlooked areas can cause problems when it comes to delivering the actual vehicle. Now, once you get everything nice and taped down, you're always going to want to check out the vehicle. Make sure that everything looks good, and I always like to get low, and by getting low you can really see up any of the issues. You don't really notice issues when you're looking from the top down, but you're more commonly going to see those issues from the bottom up. Now, when it comes to your biggest assets, they're right here, your own two hands. And here's the reason why. Before you go to paint, you need to feel what you're painting. Now, I was always really against doing this because I didn't want to contaminate the surface with my hands, but believe it or not, it's the best thing you can do. And what I mean by that is, well, make sure your hands are clean first and feel your panel. If you don't feel what the paint is going on, then you're going to have issues with dirt or debris. Just in that short amount of time of feeling, I felt some little areas that needed to be sanded. So what I'll do is I'll use a K600 on a hand pad, go over those areas and give it a light scuff. It's something very minor, but when it comes to a beautiful finish, these are the small things that you can do. Also, make sure you do this before you clean. You want to make sure you have an opportunity to get the most cleanest, most contaminant-free finish possible, and your cleaning should be the last thing you do to the panel before you paint it. Now, another big mistake I always used to make is not using lacquer thinner first on my blend panels. Now, in this case, on white, you're going to get these black smudges, and it could be around the door handle areas, and it can be anywhere where you're going to be clearing, and clear on clear is just going to show what was originally there, so you're not going to have the opportunity to cover it with base if there's any slight smudge mark or dirt mark. So the only thing that truly really works is using lacquer thinner on a lint-free rag. Do not use lacquer thinner on a microfiber rag, because that will just take off any of the dye from the rag and put it into the panel. So by doing this simple step right here, I'm telling you, it's really going to help you out, because we all know that when it comes to clearing, we only notice those little black smudges or dirt on the panel when we are actually clearing. Now, another step I like to take is, once again, using a brand new clean tack rag, and I'll once again use my K600 pad and go over it. If any areas that I find, I'll lightly sand them down. By using a tack rag, it uses a gliding sensation, so you can feel those dust nibs that you might originally miss by just using your hand only. And trust me, if you run your hand over it or your tack rag, you're gonna find something always. So give it a little quick K600, and if it's a metallic paint job, it's not a bad idea to use a K800 as well. That's why you can get away with using the K600, a little bit more aggressive, but not too aggressive enough that it will leave scratches that the base coat can't recover from. Another key tip rookies always make the mistake of is using the wrong reducer. I always like to use an extra slow reducer. By using too fast of a reducer, well, what's going to happen is your paint's going to dry too quickly, your edges are going to be dry, and the extra slow, even though it's slower, in the end, it's really faster. Now we're going to be using our Sligola Extreme 4600. This comes with the DVR Aqua Cap. It's going to be used for water-based or regular solvent-based. We're going to spray it around 28 PSI. We're going to cover the whole entire hood and then move on to our fender and our door. Now, another rookie mistake sometimes we still make is knowing the right amount of paint to put on, and really that's going to be affected by the type of paint, the reducer you're using, the paint gun, your humidity, the air temperature. There's a lot of different variables that will go into it, but basically you want a medium wet base coat application. That means that when you apply your base coat, there should be a little bit of a sheen when you lay it down. It shouldn't be completely dry. If you're laying down your base coat, it's completely dry. What that means is that it's going to be rough and coarse, and then what's going to happen is your clear coat will follow, and that will be orange, peely, gritty, and yucky as well, especially on those metallics. If you lay down a metallic finish that's dry, you're going to see it. It's going to look horrible outside. It's going to look gritty in the sun. So just knowing the right amount is very, very important. Here I'm laying it around 27 PSI on this particular paint gun, and I'm just getting the application on. You can see how my panels are already white since I already did this process earlier. So we're going to spend a lot less time in the spray booth. Now after applying that first coat, we can see we stopped right in the middle of the door, and this is completely smooth because of that extra slow reducer. We carry it all the way along. You can see how smooth it is, and it will dry semi-flat. You can see the hood is really only going to take 2 coats of paint. If we had sealed in the booth, if we had done all the processes in the booth on the car, we would just be putting a lot of overspray, a lot of possibility for the paint to get dry. The least amount of coats you can get out of on putting on a car, it's going to be more smoother. So make sure that you're doing yourself a favor and get your colors right first in the booth before they enter, or if you're going to seal, make sure you use the correct value shade. We're going to do one more coat over the whole entire car and base. So fast forward this just a little bit and we'll bring it back and we'll show you the application of our pearl. And after 2 coats of base, this is what it's looking like. You'll see how it kind of dries a little bit matte looking. This is what you want. Before you apply the pearl, it cannot still be drying. So make sure that you take the time between your coats. That's one thing I used to do. Rush, rush, rush. Never gets you anywhere. Also, another key point, something I wish I had known when I was earlier in my painting years is this right here needs to match in the ground coat. Do not spend your time trying to get the rear blend panel or any blend panel, in this case the rear door, to match by piling up your pearl. If you look at this right here, this matches in our base. You can't even really tell the difference here at all. So now the effect is just putting on the pearl. And that's just what we're going to do now. 2 coats of pearl is all we'll need. We'll extend our pearl here on our first coat about 4 inches. And then our second coat will extend another 4 or so inches. So right before the door handle is where our pearl will end. Typically, we can keep that even in more, but when you're looking at the vehicle as a whole, if you could spread it out just a touch more, then it'll give the illusion that's all the same color. So very important. You don't want an abrupt stop here. So these are big doors, so we blended it and we took advantage of what we had. We used our panels to our advantage over here on our fender. We just let the paint fall wherever it needed to be. And that's just what we did. Let's apply that pearl coat. Now, one huge rookie mistake that I made, and anyone really will make, is you overthink the pearl coat. Don't overthink the pearl coat. You know, if you're concerned about the way it's going to lay out, let me just tell you, pearl is very, very translucent. So if you like mess up on the first coat, it's not the biggest deal because you're not really going to see it. You still have maybe 2 more coats to correct it. Try to spray it even, but even if you don't spray it 100% perfect or even, I'm telling you that you're not going to notice it as much. So when you spray your pearl, just keep it around 75% overlap and just spray it like any other color that you would spray, and you're gonna be fine. Now that base is all dried, and one thing you're gonna wanna do before you clear coat, and one thing I did not do when I was much younger, is I never utilized setting a timer. And a timer is so efficient because it really disciplines you. So let's say I set a timer here for, let's say, 25 minutes. This is gonna discipline me enough so that I actually wait. I'll go do something else and I'll come back in 25 minutes, and that's gonna show me and tell me that, hey, this paint is dried enough, we're good to go, we can apply our clear coat. Now we're gonna be using that Segola 4600 Extreme still, but we switched out the cap to a DVR clear cap. Now the DVR clear cap, it's a little bit more for OEM finishes, so it'll give us that nice OEM texture that we're looking for. And once we check our timer again, we're only at 53 seconds remaining. So we know that this is ready for our clear coat finish. Now, one thing I wish I would have known, well, back in the day, is your first coat does not need to look beautiful. And well, that first coat, in some of the technical data sheets, it will tell you, spray the first coat how you want it to look. And that can get you into trouble. But the reason why is because they want you to get that mill build, right? Have enough clear coat protection, UV resistance, because if you have enough mills on it, then they can warranty it. And that's just as important too, but it's kind of a fine line, because I know a lot of you guys, you want to put that coat on first and you want that instant gratification that this job is going to look beautiful. Like, kind of slow down. One thing I've learned is big time patience. It does not need to look perfect in the first initial coat of clear. And what do I mean by that? Well, there might be a little bit of orange peel, and it might be dry in some areas, and it might not look totally uniform, but in the second coat, you can go ahead and clear things up. Now, I don't suggest 3 unless you really need it. If you're gonna wet sand and buff and you know that, then you could shoot 3, but make sure you take a little bit more time between that second and third coat as you do between the first and the second. Let's go ahead and let's apply the first coat of clear right now. We'll drop some pointers along the way to help you out. Now, early on in my career, well, I will say I had a good amount of redos, and you know, painting bumpers in your garage is a lot different from painting in a body shop and manipulating colors and painting beautiful clear coat. And majority of the jobs I did had to be wet sanded and buffed, and it's not till only about 2 or 3 years until I've really figured out how to get cleaner, smoother finishes. And it starts in the very beginning with the prep, which you mentioned in the beginning of the video, but a good amount of it is knowing how to apply the clear coat, especially on these hoods. This hood is a very, very big hood and a lot of surface area, and if you don't spray it wet enough, it's not going to look good. But I also do understand that my first coat does not need to be poured on, because that's only going to cause me problems. I need to get the paint on it, but I don't need to make it extremely wet. I need to connect my dots. That means that there needs to be clear on every square inch of it. It doesn't need to be a show quality clear finish on the first coat, but I need to have a substance on there for my second coat. So when I spray down my side panels, I always like to overlap and never stop on a door opening, because what will happen is the clear has nowhere to go. It's just going to build up on those edges. Now, I will tell you, this was my biggest problem, and I still have issues from time to time on those edges. They will build up, but there's a fix. You can sand them down, but it takes a lot of time. So it is a rookie mistake, and it's something I've been working on. And by working on it, what I'm doing is I'm taking my clear coat always past those door edge guards and stopping at least in the middle of the panel, or extending it at least 6 inches past the edge of the panel. And this way, the clear coat does not build up. Now you can see a good dry spot in the middle of that rear door if you were paying attention. And that is no issue. It's a little bit extreme, but on the second coat, we go ahead and we clear it up. Now, on the second coat, we're only about maybe 15 minutes out. I really like to let that first coat dry up. Now, guys in your garage, I know you're concerned that things are gonna fall into your paint. And if you wanna step that down to maybe 8 minutes, then it might be okay. But if you let that paint really dry, you're gonna have a good substance for the second coat to really, really stick. In the middle of the hood here, you can see I'm going the opposite way. It's a far, far reach. I'm not the tallest man in the world, but I find ways to get to the edge. And these are the areas that will be a little bit dry. So on the second coat of clear, I'm really laying it down. And I'm telling you, I'm around 85% to 90% overlap. I have a 1.3 in my paint gun, and I have pressure around 29 psi. I find by lowering my pressure just a little bit, sometimes there's a little bit more paint going to the panel rather than being broken up too much in the air and made into overspray and not actually getting to the panel. And that's very important when it comes to talking about paint transfer efficiency. You want your paint on the panel, not in the air. Now coming over onto this hood, we're going to keep it moving. I'm going to move onto the fender. And usually what will happen is besides your doors or underneath your doors, and you can let me know in the comments if this has happened, is it looks good when you're looking at it from the top up, but if we refer back to the first portion of this video, is you always want to check out your jobs from the bottom up, because that's going to show you, hey, is there orange peel? Do I need to go back? Do I need to layer in some? Since we already sprayed our first coat, on our second coat, what's happening is it's really going to go onto the panel and stick, because that first coat has had about 15 minutes to become the glue, and now this second coat we can lay it on a little bit heavier. I'm not telling you to pour it on, because that's just going to happen is runs, and we all know that runs are a big issue when it comes to beginner painters. Even seasoned painters, we have our runs from time to time, and getting a run usually always humbles us a little bit, and it's always good to get a run from time to time because it lets us know where we're at. And remember, these are chemicals, and we need to respect the chemicals, and we need to respect the tools and everything that we use in our arsenal to get a nice paint job. So what I do on the second coat is I just slow it down a little bit, and I check it as you go. You know, white's a very difficult color. You get a little bit snowblind, but using those processes of looking at it from the bottom up, I can assure you that each and every time you'll get a nice, beautiful finish. And that's exactly what we got here on this paint job. It came out very, very nice, flat OEM texture. And here it is, just about 30 minutes after it's been sprayed. You can check out the surface of the hood. You can see how beautiful and how shiny and glossy it is with minimal dust. We're talking about maybe only 3 or 4 pieces of dust, and that is how you move a car in and out, by following those surface preparation tips. You can see how smooth it is. Only maybe a couple here and there. Total of, I counted 4 or 5 throughout the hood, which will buzz down really easily. The sides are completely smooth. The doors are completely smooth. Our blend looks really good. And this is all tribute to the fact of using the tips and tricks and everything I've learned in this video along the way, as far as getting everything on the car. If you have time, if your body shop allows it, it takes a little bit more time, a little bit more boost cycles, but if you have time, get everything on the car first and then paint it. And that's gonna make sure you have one color all along, and you're gonna be able to pull this out, assemble it. You don't have to worry about scratching anything up, and it's on its way. Again, in a high production shop, this might not be the way to go, but we're a little bit slower over here and we do all the work ourselves, so this is the way that we prefer to do it. Now, where we go from here, well, we'll get this thing all amassed, we'll check it out in daylight and see how good it looks. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe. A lot of great information in this video, also other videos that are to come, whether it's spraying solids, pearls, or even metallics. They're all a little bit different, but they follow the same process. I hope you guys learned something from this video. Guys, this is Brian from Paint Society reminding you, don't overthink it. It's just paint. See you guys on the next episode.